Well, Coach Murphy, thank you so much for joining me on the highest level today, and really excited to chat with you. When I saw your background, knew that I wanted to kind of dig a little deeper with you. So I appreciate you joining the show today. And I know that we're about to start Alabama's softball season here in about a month. And to begin with today, just want to kind of hear from you, just kind of your mentality and intentions heading into approaching a new season.
Well, one of the coolest things I think about coaching in intercollegiate athletics is every year is a different year. And I think it keeps people young as well. You know, I'm sitting in my office and I can look across the street and I see the football practice fields. And again, Alabama's the king of college football right now. There's an excitement in the air. Just returned from a trip from Salt Lake City, Utah with the women's soccer team. And they had a great road trip, and it was such a cool experience for me getting to travel with a different team and a different group of young ladies and a coaching staff that's awesome. They're literally 2 doors down from me in the hallway here in Coleman Coliseum. But that excitement is in the air in the fall at a college campus, and it doesn't get old. I never take it for granted. And then the same is at the Rhodes House. You know, we have a new group, and it doesn't matter. And I tell the team this every year, it doesn't matter how many returnees we have or how many newbies, it's a different team. And last year's last year, and now you got a whole new chance to create a new legacy and a new path forward. And this is called Team 27 because it's the 27th edition of Alabama softball. And I'm really happy so far.
Very cool. And so you said number 27. Do you kind of take the approach that you are recreating the culture that has come before, or does each team kind of evolve the culture as it goes along? What is your mentality, or do you even control that?
Well, yeah, I think so. So with 7 newbies, I felt like we really had it. I'm kind of starting from scratch, and I'm going over all our core values and the things that have made us a really good program year after year after year. And I think it's the culture that helps us withstand, you know, maybe a subpar year. And, you know, for us, a subpar year was getting to regional finals and, you know, winning 44 games or whatever it was. And we finished second in the SEC. And it's crazy, the expectations of a ton of people, but that's what we've created here. And, you know, I guess you wouldn't have it any other way because you'd rather have it that way than the opposite, where nobody gives a rip about you, right? So we have, you know, I've done a lot of little things with small groups of people. I'm going to be more intentional about going to Starbucks. You know, there's a Starbucks that I can walk 3 blocks on campus and meet a kid and just say, hey, how's it going? You know, you're away from home, blah, 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 and just see how she's doing personally. Don't talk about softball, just talk about school or whatever else. So we're going to make that priority this year.
Yeah. And that's great to hear. I've heard you talk before about the importance of connection within your program and really leading people. And I had a coach that I learned under at SMU, Ronnie Van Clark, used to always say, players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think as a young coach, he said it so many times that it kind of lost meaning. And it wasn't till years later that it kind of dawned on me, where it was like, oh, like it's really not about football at all. It's about the relationship that you have with the players.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the soccer kids, we were at lunch Saturday in Salt Lake, and she said, hey, if somebody was starting right off the bat coaching, you know, what would be the first thing you'd say to them? And, you know, without hesitation, I would say exactly what you just said, and person first, athlete second. You know, you coach the person first. I really believe that if you capture a kid's heart first, everything else falls into place. So you have to get to know the kid. You have to get to know what makes her tick, what makes her talk, all those things before she can perform on the field. And then really the basis of all that is trust. You're trying to gain trust in the young lady. And as a group, if you can have trust within a group, I mean, look out, they're all going to become superwomen. And it's going to be a really, really fun team to watch for an entire season, not just like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. It's going to last a season.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. And you mentioned, your culture, person first, athlete second. And I want to dig into that a little bit. I wrote a book called Finding Intangibles. And in that book, I talked about the person and the player and kind of getting to know both and recruiting both. And I'm just curious, like when you are looking at recruiting, you said you have 7 new players on your team. As much as you focus on the person once they get in the program, how much do you focus on the person during the recruiting process?
I think you and I could walk by a softball field and both of us could pick out the best athlete. I really believe that. The way she moves, the way she throws, the way she hits, the way she pitches, the way she fields. Okay. So that part of it is easy to me. The hard part is what's inside a kid. And I think that's usually the thing that's missing when somebody recruits a kid and then maybe there's a problem, so like September 1st was the first day we could contact juniors. So every country every college in the country, Division I, could call, write, text, email a junior September 1st for the first time. So I'm like probably the slowest recruiter in the country. And I'm trying to explain to these kids and these families, hey, I want to get to know you before you commit to us. I'm not going to offer a kid, like I would say, Evan, hey, here's a full ride to Alabama, let's go. I would never do that because I had never gotten to know you. And it's very, very difficult. It's getting more difficult as the years go along. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure. But we try to get to know the kid first. And, and obviously we want her to visit campus. And then I have probably 20 to 25 questions that I ask. And I think the thing that first drew me to you was the title of the book was the intangibles. And I think that's something that we really try to hone in on. And, I have a question that I ask every kid is, if you come to Alabama and you become a part of our family, what type of intangible would you bring to us? And I'll say first, I said, do you know what an intangible is? And some don't, some do. And then, I'll give them an example if they don't. And then I'll say, okay, so do you understand the question? And they'll say, yes, sir. And I said, okay, if you come, what type of intangible would you bring? And there's silence in the room, and which is a good thing. I learned to embrace the pause in a speaking class. Yes. Don't fill the dead air, just let her think. And a lot of times it's daughter, mom, and dad. And you look at mom and dad and they're just like sweating bullets because they want to answer for her because they know the answer. Because I usually say, mom, dad, you know everything about your daughter. I don't, but I want to know. So, and Evan, believe me, some of the answers blow you away. Just unbelievable. And I've gotten up before and I was like, that was incredible. We want you in our program. And other times, maybe not so much, but I think it's one of the best questions you can ask is, yeah, you're going to hit, you're going to throw, you're going to do all those things. Yes. But if you don't play, if you don't start, what are you going to do on the bench? Because that's one of the key things. I always say, best case scenario, Evan, you'll start every game of your career. Worst case, you will not start a game. How are you going to handle that? And that's the difficult question that a lot of teams are going through, especially volleyball right now, soccer, they're just starting to get their seasons going. It's 3 weeks in, everybody's feeling good. Well, there's now the starting lineups is starting to get solidified, right? So how are you going to handle not playing? The question that I asked before the intangible one is, Evan, do you want to win or do you want to play? And again, you sit back and let them think about it, and then let's hear an answer. Because, at every program in the country, and this is across the board, 1, 2, 3 division, NAIA, junior college, whatever you're in college, you're going to practice, you're going to go to weights, you're going to run, you're going to go to school, you're going to go to study hall. All those things you are going to do, whatever program you're at, right? I don't care, Division 3 or 1. At the end of the day, do you want to win or do you want to play? Because there's a big difference. So I think sometimes it's an eye opener, for the kid. And another thing that, and you know this as well as I do, it's instant gratification nowadays. There's never like a tiny goals, tiny progress week after week after week after week. And, here's a kid that sat for 2 years and then boom, as a junior, she's an All-American. Those stories are becoming few and far between nowadays. Instead of trying to get in the starting lineup, they transfer, or summer ball, they change teams. And it's really, really unfortunate because I think a lot of kids really do have that grit and, I'm going to prove something to you attitude. They just don't give it enough time. So last year we introduced this thing called the power of tiny gains. And it's just little by little by little, you keep doing what you need to be doing. And there's even this graph, and I saw it somewhere on social media. It's awesome. And, it basically shows this huge improvement if you go for 10 months, 11 months, whatever. And especially freshmen, those are the ones that are going to get better the quickest because they're going to have 16 straight weeks of intense weight and conditioning. They've never done that before in their lives. They're going to get stronger. They're going to be smarter as a player. All the things that you love, because like, let's say there's a freshman that she's hitting balls in the gap in September. Well, October, she's hitting the wall. And then November, the ball's going over the fence because everything has come together. And it's one of the coolest things to see as a coach. And I just love that part of it.
Yeah, the seeing young men and women develop is one of the great gifts of being a leader and a coach. And you hit on something that is obviously huge right now in college athletics, which is how do you handle not playing? And I left college coaching in 2016, and the world is completely different now in regards to players transferring and obviously the NIL entering into the space. And I think that this is where the intangibles kind of play an even greater role. And for programs that really focus on it can be a competitive advantage, because I know from what I'm seeing from colleagues in college football, it's very difficult right now because if you're not playing almost immediately, they're leaving. And it is a very talent-based approach that people are taking to building their teams in football. And this is why you see, I think I saw a stat where like 67% of college quarterbacks changed teams last year. Right. And like, that's a pretty outstanding number. Like I can't even like wrap my head around it. So, how do you deal with players and their parents when they're sitting with you and kind of like, is there an honest communication in terms of there are no guarantees, or do you not talk about results at all in those conversations? Just kind of like talk about how you handle kind of this new aspect that is entering into the college athletic space.
Well, I hardly ever talk about batting average, ERA, none of that. She's here because we realize that she can play for us. So I go the extreme opposite. I ask the character base, the leadership, the personality, all those questions. And we had a mom probably 3 years ago, halfway through, stop me and say, "You never asked me anything about her softball. This is weird. This is different." And it was the first mom that actually said that to me. And and I said, "We know she's good. I don't need to ask her anything softball wise, right?" We never promised any playing time, position, or batting order. Never, because we're going to get in trouble when we don't fulfill those promises. So, and I always say, whatever you get, you earn. You don't deserve it, you earn it. So everybody's in the same boat as you are. And again, if you're a walk-on or a full ride, doesn't matter to me. If you're one of the best line hitters, you can be in the lineup and, everything like that. So, we're trying to teach them what the real world is like. And, you just said 67% of quarterbacks transfer, but also I think 44% of all men's basketball. That's the number it's up to.
Of total players.
Regardless of position.
Wow.
So we're almost to the 50% mark of basketball. And, we had kids leave last year. So is it there's not really a stigma attached to it anymore, you know? And if you're not happy, go where you're going to be happy. So I don't know. It's a difficult time to be a coach for sure. And a young kid. You just go through a pandemic. You know, it's the most anxious generation of our lifetime of the world. And then you throw on top of that a life-changing event. So there is a lot of stuff going on in every person in America, really, let alone, you know, not just athletes, everybody. So it's a challenging time to be both a coach and an athlete, I think.
Yeah. Certainly seeing a lot of my colleagues and friends in coaching that are, you know, struggling with this specific aspect. So know that we're all kind of seeing it. And you mentioned something a moment ago. You said the power of tiny gains. And I was fortunate to coach at SMU during a time where we kind of like had turned around that program. And we kind of did it on the back of small wins. And that was kind of our mantra. You know, we were the 30 years of losing previous to a new coaching staff coming in. And we really said, like, there is no foundation here. Like, we're going to do it one small win at a time. And I saw the power of that because we were able to kind of turn that entire culture around and kind of just the mentality of those players and how they viewed themselves. Talk about how that plays out in terms of either your culture or your leadership, this power of the tiny gains.
Well, I think one of the ways it starts in our weight room, which is right over here. And our strength coach is awesome. Her name is Michelle Diltz, and I think she's in year 18 with us, which is unreal. And weight room is basically numbers, right? So every single day she tests for something every day. So one of them is a standing jump. And there was a couple of girls last year that every single time they improved. So Michelle would send me the numbers and say, look at Jordan. It's unbelievable what she's done. And so I think there's a lot of ways to change behavior, but two of the ways that I try to do it is affirm or model. So if you want, Evan, if I want you to do something specific, I'm going to model that behavior for you. And when you watch me, you say, shoot, I want to be like Murphy. You know, he's doing what the coach wants. So you model. You don't have to say a word. You know, for a strength coach, if she says behind the line, not on the line, not front of the line, you get behind the line, right? Whatever the stretch is, you do it perfectly. She's going to eventually see that and say, Evan, I like the way you warm up. That's perfect. Thank you. So whether a kid's going to admit it or not, they are all saying around you, I want her to say that about me. His performance, his behavior just got affirmed. That's like one of the things that everybody wants. They want affirmation, right? So you can affirm it verbally, or you can model it and not say a word. So Michelle does a really good job of affirming good behavior in the weight room. Then when they come to the field, I'm going to say, Jordan, oh my gosh, you are improving daily. And the numbers are right here. Michelle, she just sent me the spreadsheet. It's unbelievable. And then, you know, we have technology and other things at the field that same thing, you know, like exit velocity off the bat or distance off a bat, something like that. Those are things that you can literally say, or a pitcher that's throwing 62, 63, 64, 65 miles an hour. You can say, look, you're getting better. You might not see it. And then another thing I do is I try to find anything and everything on social media, whatever, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of stories or snippets of people that are doing that same thing. You know, whether it's a little kid in a soccer match or an adult doing something, or, you know, I'm sure you remember the little girl and the dad, and she was trying to jump up, you know, like a little high jump.
Like a little box jump.
Yes. And
yeah.
she would get upset, and, you know, dad would say, you got this, you know, and then boom, I show that to our kids. And I think a lot of times now, you know, this is like 10 years ago, and you've already said that it's different now, but it used to be where you could just say, Evan, let's go do this. And you would do it. Now I need to say, Evan, we're going to do this because this is going to help you XYZ. I made a new arrangement of our seating in our clubhouse this year. We have a classroom in our clubhouse building, and it's literally 24 chairs. We have the projector, in front of us. We've got the computer. We watch game film and videos and whatever. So we did a little different seating, and it's a technique called insulation, where you put the older kids on the outside and you insulate the new kids. So they're like watching over, and it's weird. I looked it up, and it's absolutely true. It's called insulation. So instead of just saying, and I did put like name cards on every seat. So when they come in, they have to see where they're seating. Well, it was, Montana Fouts and Allie Shipman and whoever else. But I said, the reason why you're seated the way you are is this. And then like after the meeting, I heard a couple of them say, oh, that insulation, that makes sense. So if I hadn't said it, maybe somebody would have thought, why did I get on the back row? Or why did I get on the side row and not front and center? And now they understand. So we're trying to do a much better job with that, because believe me, I'm not perfect anyway. And I try to read stuff. Now I'm going to follow you like a hawk and listen from you and learn from you, and just try to get better every single day.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing a lot about what you're discussing is really a lot of growth mindset, obviously. And I know Carol Dweck's book Mindset was kind of where the idea from my book originated, because when I read that, I was like, oh, these are all the kind of traits in terms of mentality that you want in your players, and the way they view work ethic. And you were talking about affirming and confirming. And it's not just saying like, oh yeah, your numbers are great. It's kind of like explaining to them that like, man, you're here every day, 30 minutes early in the weight room. And like, I can see that progression. And even though that might seem small, but connecting the two, I think, especially when we're talking about developing a team or developing a young athlete, is crucial, because now they see, insulation. It's like, oh man, I can't believe Coach Murphy's making me sit up front. Like I hate sitting up front. Yes. But when you explain it, it brings everything together. And I think also in a way kind of creates an inclusive environment. Like you're kind of like letting them in on your leadership secret, even though it's not necessarily a secret. And it kind of like includes them as opposed to maybe just doing things. And like you said, 10 years ago, it was like, just do what I say. Don't ask questions.
And what you said about the weight room was perfect, because I can imagine that you're probably a very good affirming person. Because if I just said, Evan, you work your butt off. Okay, what does that look like? What does that mean? Anybody could come into a weight room and just say that to anybody. But the way you said it was very specific. You mentioned examples. And when you affirm a behavior that you like in someone, that's what you should do. Very specific, to the point. Don't beat around the bush. Don't be too broad. Very specific. And I guarantee you, if you do that with somebody, they're going to, way I describe it when I talk to the team and when I speak to coaches groups is like a compliment is like a high five. An affirmation is like a hug from grandma and grandpa. There's a big difference there, right? You're going to remember that hug from grandma for a long time. A compliment's, it's going to be fleeting. I like your jacket today, Evan. Oh, thanks. And then you're going to forget about it. But if you really affirm the behavior that you like in somebody, and the weird part of it is, like I'll say to a kid on the team, I'm like, have you ever told her that? Have you ever told her that what you just said to me? And she's like, no. And it's unfortunate, because there's so many opportunities to do that either they're shy, they don't want to be vulnerable with somebody. It's too bad, because I think there could be a lot better cohesion, chemistry, whatever, if you would just break down the wall and say, you know what, I want to say this about you.
Yes, this is definitely lacking in male sports, and obviously in my experience in football. I've heard you talk about kind of the power of affirmation, and I know you guys do. And maybe this was a one-off thing, or maybe you do this every year. It was kind of, it was like a bag of
Yeah.
affirmation, if I
Yeah.
have it correct. Can you just explain that a little bit and kind of like behind what's behind that? Because I thought that was a really cool exercise that you guys do. Okay. The Murph Dog bag. Okay.
Yes. So I buy 200 brown paper sacks at Walmart, Target, whatever, $2, $3. It's unbelievable. It's like the cheapest thing you can buy. And I bring it to the team and I have an empty one and it's plain. And I'll say, this isn't a popcorn bag. This isn't a brown paper bag. This is life-changing. This is an affirmation bag. And what you do is they already know by this time that what an affirmation is. Okay. And oops, sorry about that.
Good.
They write a card and something like this, and we have scratch paper at the field, or a lot of the kids, they literally will go home at night and come up with some incredible, wow, unbelievable, yeah. And they take their time, they really think it through, and then we do it for a week. So I'll say, everybody gets a bag, you're gonna decorate your bag, put your name and number on it, whatever you want. And then at our clubhouse, there's a windowsill that runs all the way through this front side of the building, and it's long. So coaches, managers, strength coach, grounds crew, anybody that touches our program, video guy, student athletic trainers, the whole bunch. At one point, there could be 36 affirmation bags on the counter. And then we'll usually introduce it on a Sunday. And then when we play the next Thursday, or when we leave to go play somewhere on the road, after practice, you can go in and you take your affirmation bag. You can't read anything until you get to your car or to your apartment, or to your dorm room by yourself. And then you take it out. And I know a lot of times there's a lot of tears. It's like one of the times in their lives that they hear nothing but 36, 35 positive things from people that they absolutely love and cherish and adore. And then, like one of them will tweet out, best day of the year, it's affirmation day. And every single year, Evan, I'm telling you the truth, there will be a comment from somebody else that either played with our program, was a student athletic trainer 10 years ago. He'll see the tweet and he'll write, hey, UA Coach Murphy, guess what? And then he'll show me a picture of his that he still has. And the one that I remember very, very distinctly it was a student athletic trainer, and he was 7 years before. And he only worked with us for a semester. So it hit home with him a lot. And another time we do a Halloween costume party every year, and some of the girls will ask to host it. So we'll go to their apartment, or some of them rental house and whatever. And so I used the restroom one time. I turned around, I washed my hands. I look at the mirror, and literally the entire mirror, she has taped all of the little affirmations, everywhere on her mirror. And the only thing that I can see is this little circle. So every morning when she would brush her teeth, comb her hair, whatever, she would probably read 1, 2, or 3. So it is a huge popular thing. We're going to do it every single year. And again, it really goes back to what I said at the very beginning, is if you can capture a kid's heart, you can do anything with them. So go for the heart first, and then the rest is going to be great.
Yeah, very special. And, we were talking a moment ago just about everybody leaving in college athletics, going somewhere else, thinking the grass is always greener. And, I think creating a culture where everybody is included is one of the keys that college programs can have moving forward. And another thing I just want to point out that I really love about what you said is it's not just the players, but it's the student managers. It's the grounds crew. It's the person who cleans the clubhouse. It's these people, these invisible people that help, that are part of the group collective, even though they're not in the program. Right. And like, they don't have to be in the program, but I think like including them within the team is something that's really special. And I think that's great also for the players to say, again, going back to kind of emulating and modeling the type of behavior that you want the girls to stand for.
I think one of the best things a leader can do is always see the big picture, see the bigger picture. And I spoke to the Alabama Grounds Crew Association. They had a convention in Tuscaloosa this summer, and my guy asked me to speak to this group, and they're from golf courses, high schools, colleges, you name it, city park departments, but they had to do something with grass, baseball infield, softball infield, golf course, something. And I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm just the grounds crew. I'm just the SID. I'm just the housekeeper of the building. And that they should never, ever start, should never start like that. And, to see the bigger picture. And I said, I want our guys, our grounds crew to say, when somebody comes up, hey, what do you do here? I want them to say, I'm helping win national championships for the softball team. I'm helping these people win a ring. I'm going to win a ring. So the bigger picture is key, especially with support staffers, because you said invisible, I would say they're behind the scenes. And it takes a village here. You would just be shocked that when we go to the World Series, I want to include anybody that touches our program and get on that plane with us. And could be up to 50 people. And the team is only 20, 22. So there's a lot of people and a lot of layers that's like their huge reward at the end of the season, is to get on that plane to Oklahoma City and root us on. So
yeah, so cool. So cool. You mentioned a moment ago, hey, I'm here helping win a national championship. And I wanted to talk to you about results versus process. So for me, I always kind of think of things just in terms of being process driven versus results oriented. Yes, you have to have an element of kind of reverse engineering the results you want. And we understand that we live in this results oriented world. But I just want to get your take as kind of the leader of the program that has had a ton of success. Like, do you guys put those pictures of trophies on the wall? Do you guys talk about kind of like everything is aiming towards a national championship? Or is everything just focused on Thursday weightlifting session? Just kind of talk about how you balance maybe the process versus the results.
Well, we rarely say win or lose. We don't do that. And the king of the process is across the street in Coach Saban. And it's not, we're going to win a national championship. It is, what are we going to do to win that national championship? The daily grind, or whatever you want to call it, and the continuous improvement. And I know he has a growth mindset, and I know, everybody over there is on board 100%. That's a key too. But for us, like, our unspoken goal is to win a national championship. We don't really say it. It just, everybody knows it's there, because once you win one, you want to win another one. So we usually don't even mention the words W or L. It's just a daily continuous improvement, growth mindset, all the things that we've talked about so far.
Yeah. The Frank Gann Sr., who I coached with, he used to always say, what's the score here? The score doesn't matter. We're trying to play at our highest level, which is, how I got the name for my podcast. And, that always stuck with me, because it's not about winning and losing. It's about, did we reach our potential? Did we perform at our absolute highest level? And, you mentioned Coach Saban, and as a former football coach, I have to just ask, and I know a lot of times we can get siloed in our programs, but you still are around each other, and you still have the opportunity to either observe or even have conversations with other coaches. And I just want to know, over the years, Is there anything that you've learned watching Coach Saban, or maybe through conversations, or maybe things that he's done that have maybe changed the way you approach your leadership and the way you lead your program?
Well, first, we're both Catholic, and I see him in church more than anywhere else. He doesn't miss, and that's pretty admirable. Second, he does a coach's show every Thursday. It's called Hey Coach, and it's at a local restaurant. They put up a stage. The stage is there all year because in the spring, the basketball, baseball, softball, gymnastics, all us, we do our show on Monday nights. But in the fall, it's Thursday, and they'll ask one of the other coaches to come early because it's about an hour and a half, I think. And Coach Saban could probably do it for an hour, but an hour and a half is a little long. Plus, he's coming from practice. So they'll have a guest coach for the first 20 minutes, and then they have a guest media person for another 10 minutes, and then here comes Coach. And the thing that is, I've learned from him is every time he speaks, there's a reason behind what he says. There's never a time where he just blurts out stuff. Never. Here we are in this restaurant, and it's packed, and it's a statewide, Alabama radio network, and I'm sure it's everywhere. But they allow people to call in, which is unreal.
Unheard of these days.
Yeah. And they ask him a question. And almost every single time there is a pause, a thought, and then he answers. It's never just a blurt out. So what he's doing is he's telling the people in the restaurant, and he's telling the people over the statewide network, and he's also telling his players, this is the message. And it's fascinating to watch. I also love soccer, volleyball. The cross-country teams here are really, really good. So whenever I like being in the spring, because I can learn from everybody in the fall, basketball included, and whatever they go through, I can maybe pick up something. I listen to every press conference. I'm a nerd, and I'll tell you a secret about me, but whenever anybody gets hired, AD or a coach, I find the press conference, and I've listened to probably 250, and I want to hear what they say. And I don't know, I find that interesting. I want to see, first of all, if they've connected with the people. You can tell right away, like, this is going to be a good hire. This is a good spot for this person. And then other times it's like, I don't know about this, because it's, but you can learn a lot by just listening to press conferences, and Coach Saban does it like twice a week. And so try to listen, learn from that. Obviously I go to a lot of games of every sport, but just having that opportunity to get prepared in the fall to what we might face in the spring is priceless. And I love being a spring sport because of that.
Yeah, very cool. I know vulnerability is a big part of your program, and I'm going to be vulnerable here and just share that I am also a press conference nerd right there with you, Coach. As a matter of fact, I came across some notes the other day from 2003 when I was a sophomore or junior in college, and I was taking notes from the Bill Parcells press conferences when he was the Dallas Cowboys head coach. And it was kind of my early education as a coach. I wasn't a great high school player. I didn't play in college, and I didn't have any family in coaching. So it was really kind of through these press conferences is how I kind of like learned a lot of my early thoughts and philosophies about coaching. And so I can even remember back in the day listening to those press conferences, and I still do. So I'm right there with you listening to those press conferences.
1 year after the Final Four in volleyball, a gentleman named Kevin Hambley from Illinois lost. And he was just brilliant in it, felt bad for him, but it wasn't like this funeral type. It was great. So I wrote him a note, and it's probably 12 years ago, 10 years ago, and we've been friends since. But he's moved to Stanford, and he won back-to-back national championships, and just doing a great job. But he wrote back because he's like, who's this softball coach and why is he writing to me after I lost? But, you know, you can learn a lot from either new jobs. The other thing too, that Coach Saban, and a lot of people don't realize this, he's a really good loser. He doesn't lose hardly ever, right? But last year when they lost to Georgia in the national championship, and I don't know if you remember this, but Kirby and him come to the middle of the field after the game, and Saban's congratulating Kirby, and you know, I think truly happy for him. You know, he was smiling. He wasn't, you know, like a sourpuss or whatever. But it was amazing to see how he reacted after a loss. And I think a lot of times a younger coach needs a role model, how to deal with that versus how to deal with winning all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because not very many people watch the losing press conference. They watch the winning. But he can teach a lot of people how to be a very, very good sport, you know, when you happen to lose a game. And he was very, very good, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, something else you mentioned, I just want to touch on is kind of the intention behind everything that he says. And I think that, you know, in football, we see a lot of assistants from Bill Belichick and Coach Saban go coach at other places. And there's kind of this stigma to people underneath both of them that they don't really have a ton of success leaving Coach Saban or Coach Belichick. And I think part of the reason is those coaches are held in such high regard that they try and emulate everything that they see from those coaches, but they don't maybe understand all of the underlying factors and how everything that they're saying connects to their personality as a coach, the way they lead their program. It's not just an answer in a press conference. There is true intention and connection to the culture of their program and their leadership of their program.
Absolutely. And I think if, you know, you're never going to be him. You have to be yourself. You
Yes.
You learn 1,000 things from him, yes. But when you take on your program, it's got to be you. And I think way too many people, and I've seen it here, unfortunately, where somebody gets their dream job, and all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing? You got here because you were successful doing whatever you do at another school, and then all of a sudden you come to Alabama, and it's like, nobody knows what's going on, and I don't know if it's becomes too big for them or the pressure engulfs them, but unfortunately it has happened. But just advice to new coaches is to be yourself. You can't try to be somebody else when you're in a head coaching role. It just does not work.
Yeah. And since I've left football coaching, I've started working a lot with emerging leaders, right? People 25 to 40 years old, first time, oftentimes leadership roles. And it's interesting because they always think they need to have all of the answers. And, you know, I always encourage them that people don't want perfect leaders. They want human leaders. And it's okay to surround yourself with people that maybe have more experience than you, or they're smarter than you, or say that you don't know the answer if asked a question. And I think like overcoming that fear a lot of times is a huge hurdle. And I want to connect this to something I did want to ask you about, which is vulnerability. And I saw a sign through, I can't remember if it was just a walkthrough or on YouTube somewhere, but there's a sign entering into your clubhouse, No Judgement Zone. And I heard a quote from one of your players saying, as they were kind of doing the walkthrough of this clubhouse, like, this is where we're vulnerable. And so I just want to like hear from you, like building that culture of vulnerability, like how do you do that? And maybe like, what were the origins of that? Or has that always been the case for the program?
Well, through that hallway, it's in a hitting facility. You come up a driveway, you go in, hitting facility, and then there's a hallway that goes straight through our building, and it's the classroom, then the locker room, and then the clubhouse. But on the wall on the top, it says person first, athlete second. And person is bolded, big letters, and then there's a line, and then underneath it is athlete. So every single day, we want them to be reminded that it's person first, athlete second. Then you go through a little hallway, and on the door that you have to open is the poster that, way to be observant, Evan. It says you're now entering a no judgment zone. And, you know, I'm originally from Iowa, small town, northeast Iowa, Fayette, population 960. My associate head coach, who's been with me for 25 years, she's from a small town in South Louisiana in the middle of Cajun country called Crowley. Her name is Allison Habits. And then my former pitching coach was from a small town in Pennsylvania called Chambersburg. My current pitching coach, he's from a small town in north central Missouri called Edina, Missouri. So we're from all over. And small town Iowa is going to be way different than a young lady from Atlanta, Georgia, or Dallas, Texas, or Houston, or wherever we're getting kids. So I put that up there just to remind them that everybody's going to be different. We're going to embrace the differences. But the quicker that you can be yourself, the better off you're going to be. So if you're holding back whatever, it's holding you back. So like this year we have a graduate transfer, 1 year. And I said, Faith, the quicker we learn you, the true you, the better this experience is going to be for everybody, especially for you. So come on, even managers, might be with me for 2, 3, 4 years. And there's some shy introverts. I was like, come on, we got to get it all. I want it all. I want to learn who you are. Show us who you are quickly. We're going to love you no matter what. So that vulnerability starts to happen. Obviously, the sign on the door is an invitation that you don't judge anybody in here. So maybe it's the small town kid in me, or I don't know, because we want everybody to be their true self, 100%.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned walking through, you said there's a classroom. And I've heard you talk on other podcasts about how you take your team routinely into that classroom and do almost kind of like personal life development lessons during practice time. Kind of unheard of when we're talking about like the highest levels of sports. Who's going to take practice time, valuable practice time away to kind of go in the classroom and talk about the power of a handwritten note or the power of affirmation? So can you just kind of talk about how you validate that in your mind? Because I know a lot of coaches would say, like, I'm not giving up practice time to do anything other than practice. But yet it's obviously very important. I agree with you. But how do you kind of like view it in terms of like relating to the performance of your team and the performance of the athletes?
Well, first, I think it's one of the greatest things we do, and it could be 20, 15, 10 minutes before every practice. We just sit in there. I either have a life lesson, I have a video, I have a speaker, I have a guest, whatever. And Tim Corbin at Vandy, who's one of my role models and one of the best baseball coaches in the world, he also has a classroom, and I model my stuff after him too. But I heard him speak one time, and he's like, if we can build a better person, we can build a better player. If we can build a better player, we're going to build a better team. If we build a better team, all the things happen, right?
Yeah.
But it starts with the person first. And I honestly believe that too. So if you build better people, they're going to be better teammates, which in turn is going to give you a better team. So why wouldn't you do that? I don't understand. It's 15, 20 minutes. We don't need to practice for 4 hours a day. That's too much overload, and I don't want anybody to get burned out on softball. But some of the best things that we've done is in that classroom. And, I have a library of videos of TED Talks, things that I've found 25 years ago, maybe something I'll find tomorrow from you or something. And, I've had reviews too. I always ask at the end of every year, I say, what did you like? What didn't you like? And what would you like to see more of? Those 3 questions are asked of every kid as they go home for the summer. And I had a kid 1 year say, don't ever stop showing those videos in the clubhouse. And, she was serious about it. She enjoyed every single one of them. Seriously, it could be 2 minutes. And then I say, let's go out to practice. So just something we've done from a long, long time. And, you know, when we remodeled our clubhouse, I said, I want some sort of classroom, meeting room, whatever. And, you know, thank God the architect listened and he put it in there for me, but we've used it since day one. And I just think it builds a better team.
Yeah. And also important to kind of take players maybe outside of the weight room and in the field to kind of like continue to build those relationships and that connection too. Like you said, that 2-minute video that they're going to remember 10 years from now versus like the same kind of like things that you say after each practice and before each game. So funny how that's the things that sticks in our mind.
We do something called SOS, which is Speakers on Success. So I'll invite somebody from the community. It doesn't have to be anybody athletic, just somebody that's been successful. They come in and they say their educational path, then their career path, and then maybe some advice. And last year we had a gentleman from, he's talent acquisition of a accounting firm. He gets business for the firm. Brilliant. And it turned into one of the best 30-minute sessions that I've had in my career. And I had said, Bobby, how do they ask for a raise when they have a job? He went on this Academy Award winning spiel, and I was like, I'm like blown away because I needed to hear it. I mean, it was just the girls were, and everybody at their seats, they have a notebook, everybody. So notebook, pen, paper, they're all writing notes. They asked questions. It was very lively. It was interactive, and he was loving it. I was loving it. And it's going to help them. They're going to remember that 30-minute how to ask for a raise for the rest of their lives, especially as a female. Because I think oftentimes, and shoot, I do it too. I'm like, oh, thank you very much. But I don't come back and say, I think I'm worth this. So he gave them very sound, practical advice for when they go in for a raise.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredibly valuable. And I'm sure inspirational a ton of times too. I know we're coming close to the end of our time, but you mentioned kind of keeping all this information. And I call myself an organizational nerd. I'm 10 years behind you. I've been keeping 15 years worth of like notes from meetings and videos and quotes and all that sort of stuff. So two things. Number one, from just like your perspective, like how do you keep all this information? Do you keep it digitally? Is it all in like just a whole file cabinet of binders behind you? I personally want to know that. Maybe nobody else does. And then secondly, just like maybe a couple of sources that you love to pull from or that you find yourself kind of going back to for some of this material.
So what I try to do is, I email myself. Patrick Murphy, and then subject line will either be leadership, motivation, resiliency, grit, whatever the main message is going to be. And then I'll copy and paste an address, a YouTube, whatever. And then it goes into a email folder. So if it says leadership, there's probably going to be 250 examples. Or if I find something from you where you email me and I put it in a file. Most of it is on my email. And I have a file folder right behind me I need to go through it because it is jam-packed. I can't move stuff. And then what was the second part? I'm sorry.
Oh, just curious if there's like sources that you kind of find yourself going back to, just like with whether it's on Twitter or maybe it's like a specific show or a specific person or, I know I'm kind of pulling information from all over the place all the time. So,
well, one of the byproducts of, being asked to speak and things like this, at the end of every coaching clinic that I do, I'll always mention it after every speech. Hey, if you come across anything that you think I'd like, because you've heard me now for 3 hours, send it to me. And so, one of my main things, and we haven't even talked about it, is Mudita. And Mudita means having vicarious joy in someone else's success. There's not an English word that equals it, but there's 2 words that equal the opposite. in the English language, and it's jealousy and envy. And you and I both know those are two dirty words in a team sport. And I have tried and tried and tried to get every kid on every team to buy into that Mudita message, having vicarious joy in someone else's success. So I actually have a 50-minute speech just on Mudita. And I have examples, I have team, I have sports, I have actors and actresses, an Academy Award, accepted speeches. You can find them everywhere. So at the end of the speech, I always say, hey, if you come across anything that might help me in another speech, send it to me. Evan, you'd be shocked. My folder has just like exploded with emails from people that, hey, Murph, I saw this the other day. Is this Mudita? And chances are it is. And it's just one of the coolest things to go around and learn from other people too. So I'd say it's more of a hodgepodge of social media, listening to podcasts, getting to know people like you, getting to know other coaches like Kevin and Tim Corbin, and just people around the country. And that's one of the benefits of social media, is you get to learn and see some really cool stuff and go through all the other stuff. But yeah, it's a hodgepodge of everything.
Yeah, really great. I mean, I know personally, like, not only this conversation has given me a ton, but even the research I did on you preparing for this interview, I was filling up my Evernote. So really great. And Coach Murphy, thank you so much for taking the time. This was a great conversation, and we'll have to dig into Mudita a little bit more next time when you join me. But thank you so much, and best of luck this season.
Yeah, and one thing, I've done this forever, like 34 years now, but the more I've done it, the more I look for somebody's demeanor. I think it's a key, and your demeanor is excellent. So it was easy to talk with you, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Coach. Thank you so much.